The two candidates who are with us today will have time for a brief opening statement and equal time to answer questions. Kevin Woodard won our coin toss, and he will go first. Kevin?
Well, hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here today. Thanks for the invite. It's interesting to have this forum in this fashion this year, but as we all know, COVID has affected everyone's lives in a number of different ways. I'm sure people would like to know a little bit about who I am, what my background is. So basically, I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering degree from Tennessee Technological University and an MBA from Centenary College of Louisiana. I worked about 25 years in the transportation and traffic engineering field, including serving as a city traffic engineer here in Bloomington for a few years. And besides that, I have the MBA on top of it. And so that's some of my background that prepares me for this position that I'm seeking this year. We have some problems in the auditor's office. We have an auditor that's making news when she really shouldn't be because there are things that aren't getting done. And then we seem to have a problem with a little bit of a power struggle between the auditor's office and the county board and the board chair. And that's one of the reasons I'm running this year. As a Libertarian, I'll let you know that one of the advantages I present is a choice that's independent. I am not tied to the power structures that exist in both the Republican and Democratic parties in our area, and I would provide an independent vote for you. And so you could trust me to be your watchdog to make sure that the monies that are spent in the county are spent the way they should be and that everything's in your best interest. I also would like to be in the news periodically for being a speaking voice that speaks for fiscal responsibility in the community. And so if you hear from me, it'll be because I'm trying to tell you something that's going on in the county government that you need to hear about. And I look forward to continuing this forum here today.
Thank you. Now to Rob Fazzini.
Good morning. One of the first questions I get asked by my friends when I tell them I'm running for auditor is, well, what's the actual definition of what an auditor does? And if you look back on June 10th in 1911, there was an act created by the state that said the county auditor had certain duties, and two of the 8 are: 1, the auditor checks all claims against the county and recommends action to the county board, and the second, the auditor maintains a continuous audit of the operation and financial records of the auditor's agents and divisions of the county. Put more simply, the auditor makes sure that the county department heads are following the budgets that are approved by the county board. So, why would a happily semi-retired person like me want to run for an auditor position that requires full-time work? Well, my explanation can best be described by a quote from Robert Kennedy. Some people see things as they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not. Why is the auditor overpaid with a salary of $100,324 for a job worth about $75,000? Why does the auditor need to declare a political party affiliation to perform the job of an independent auditor? Why does the auditor need to possess skills to be elected by all the citizens of the county? Why not? Why not pay the auditor my proposed salary of $75,000? Why not eliminate the need for the auditor to declare an affiliation with a political party to be able to serve the role of an independent auditor? Why not hire the auditor with the technical and the managerial skills to do the job? The auditor should not need the skills to run a political campaign to get elected and hold this position. Thank you.
So there was considerable time spent last fall on the county's bookkeeping practices that seemed to be a primary rift between the auditor's office and the county treasurer's office. And our first question will start with you, Rob. Explain your preferred method of accounting and explain why this should matter to the taxpayers. You get 2 minutes.
I think the policy-making body that decides what the accounting policies are is the county board. And when there was a rift between the county auditor and the county treasurer as to who gets to decide what sort of accrual policy the county used, the county attorney did the research and concluded that neither the auditor nor the treasurer was, in fact, the policymaker final decision. It is the county board. It's the role of the county auditor and the county treasurer to carry out the policy, not make it. So I would follow the policies that the county board deems appropriate.
And Kevin Woodard, your response.
I don't think it really matters what my opinion is. What matters is what's the best accounting practice. So I would look toward the accounting field to see what practices we should be going by, and I would be recommending those practices. Rob likes to talk a lot about the rule of the county board. When we look at what the state's attorney's office said, we know that he prepared his recommendation anticipating a suit from our current county auditor, from Michelle. So I don't know that that's an unbiased opinion at all. In fact, the officer is elected, the auditor is elected, just like the treasurer, to be a watchdog. And just because you have to play a little politics to get that, well, that's the root of democracy. We elect our leaders, and we don't have a check on the county board if we don't have an auditor and a treasurer that's willing to stand up for the county board for what's right when that needs to happen. Now, we do want to get along with the county board, of course, and I promise to be able to do that if elected.
And this is 89.1 FM, WGLT, and WGLT.org. You're listening to WGLT's election coverage. In a profile of candidates in the race for McLean County Auditor, we have two of the candidates with us, Libertarian Kevin Woodard and a Democrat Rob Fazzini. Next question, we'll start with Kevin. The county auditor's position is elected, though it does seem to be largely bureaucratic. The county voters in 2014 narrowly chose to keep it as an elected position. Making the position appointed would allow the auditor to play a greater role in budgeting as opposed to serving a more independent role that the auditor does now. Is an elected auditor the best way to do it, and why or why not?
Well, I think, of course, it's the best way to do it. Let's look at the checks and balances of our national government. We have an executive and a president. We have a judicial branch. And then we have a legislative branch. And that's how we make sure that nobody in Washington has too much power over us. And we vote for people in both the legislative branch and the president. In the county situation, all we have is a county board. We don't have a county executive that's elected. So if we don't have a county auditor and a county treasurer that's elected to be a check, there's no checks and balances for the citizens out there. And the citizens don't have any way to control, some of the things that's going on. Everything would be at the mercy of the county board. The county board chair is elected by the 20 county board members, 2 from each district of 10 districts. So is it fair that the most powerful person in the county should be a person that was only elected by 10% of the people in the county? I don't think that's the government we need. And if you put it on an appointed position, you're just burying it. You're not getting the independence that an auditor needs to have.
And Rob, your response?
Yeah, I think that the auditor would be actually more independent if appointed, rather than being beholden to a party to help get elected to a position for which he or she might not actually be qualified. You don't know when you elect somebody if they are really qualified to do the job. If you appoint somebody, you actually have an interview process for people to make sure that you have the technical skills and the managerial skills to be able to cooperate with people and have their respect so that when you're doing your audits, they actually believe the results and implement the changes. I think the auditor, as appointed, could easily report to 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans as an audit committee, or report to the county board administrator, who is not an elected official and who does not have a party affiliation. I think you're more independent if you're appointed than if you're elected. And there's also the whistleblower policy. If the auditor doesn't feel like he or she is getting the right level of power and cooperation, there is a way to run that up and make sure that that happens.
As we continue on 89.1 FM, WGLT, and WGLT.org, speaking with 2 of the candidates for McLean County Auditor, our next question will start with Rob Fazzini. You had proposed, at the time of your announcement, that the auditor should be a part-time job, that it could be done in 30 hours a week. Now that bill-paying functions were moved to the treasurer's office a few years ago, and at that time, the county auditor staff was cut considerably. Is that something that you support? Can this job of county auditor be done in 30 hours a week?
As it's presently constructed, yes. I believe in January of 2017, the county board transferred 3 of the 4 people, and for whatever reason, decided that instead of reducing the salary as the Finance Committee recommended to $75,324, the county board actually transferred those people, left only 1 person reporting to the auditor, and increased the auditor's salary. It made no sense. I don't understand why that happened. It shouldn't have. I have proposed since then that we actually have this as a full-time position, but that the salary be reduced, and I made that in a public finance committee meeting in April. And in May, the finance committee actually did recommend that the salary be reduced for the next 4 years to $80,600. I think we had a part in doing that, and that's the kind of administration I'd like to be part of, one that is responsive and watching for dollars that were being wasted.
And Kevin Woodard, your response, can this job be done in less than a full-time capacity, or are there other reforms along those lines that you would support?
Well, I'm a Libertarian, and Libertarians are all for cutting government and cutting unnecessary offices, but this isn't the right office. This, again, is a watchdog. And so I would remind you that Rob originally proposed eliminating the position entirely. And then he's back down to making it part-time, and now he's saying make it appointed. So with all due respect, I don't really know what Rob wants. Look, the salary is to pay a professional salary. It would be excellent if all 3 candidates running in this election were CPAs. To get a good CPA, you would need to pay that salary. Hopefully, one of these days, we may have 3 great CPAs running against each other, but we don't have that this year. So I'm not talking about eliminating the salary. I'm not talking about reducing the salary. The salary is to attract good applicants, okay? It's also to pay the person that's in the job to do what they're worth. And hopefully, if we have a CPA sometime, we'll have that person in there that really merits the salary that we have right now. But can the job be done part-time? Sure. But how well do you want to do the job? See, the job's basically an accounting job, and if you know about accounting, you know that when you keep values of property and things like that in accounting rules are made to be accounting rules to keep everybody on a level table so everybody's report kind of reflects each other's and there's some sense in it for everybody. But they don't necessarily represent what your public works assets, for example, are worth. They don't really represent what the current value of property is. And if you look at the county's financials, you'll see that most of the county's worth is in the public assets that they have. So I would like to do more things along that line besides just capital, accounting budgets. I would like to look at capital asset management and see what the county's doing on that, so that when we have all these assets on our books, we know that that's a real figure and not just an accounting number.
As we continue on 89.1 FM, WGLT and WGLT.org, you're listening to WGLT's election coverage and our profile of candidates in the race for McLean County Auditor, as we have Libertarian candidate Kevin Woodard and Democrat Rob Fazzini. The incumbent, Republican Michelle Anderson, was unable to participate in our candidate forum today. And I want to shift, lastly, before we go to closings, how does one's political philosophy, how does your political philosophy, and Kevin, you're up on this one, how does this impact your view of how the office should be restructured beyond just the nature of the bureaucracy, the nuts and bolts of doing the job as it's laid out?
Well, as a Libertarian, we believe less government is better. And we would like to reduce the size of government overall. So one thing I would do would be look for wasteful spending and try to make sure that our books tell a better picture than they might otherwise. And so you would like to have time to do things that auditors do normally that the current auditor or anyone that's had this position maybe doesn't do. Most people understand that the current auditor checks all the bills and makes sure they're all good to go before they pass them off to the treasurer. But there can be a lot more to auditing than that. So again, I would like to look into areas like capital asset management to see, what is the real value of our capital assets that we have. How real are our books and everything as far as that goes, and compare them to other things, so that the job is definitely, worth the salary if the person puts the effort into it. I would make sure I was available for meetings with the finance committee and with the board. That would be one of the first things I'd do, would be put those meetings and things on my calendar. Rob mentioned earlier that the state set up the requirements for the elected auditor and the treasurer as well, and there's a reason they did that. They did that for about the 25 largest cities in the state because these cities have bigger budgets and much more potential for money to be wasted if someone's not looking over things to make sure things are done the right way. So again, those people, when they set that up, they thought the auditor needed to be elected, and I agree with them on that.
And Rob Fazzini, your response to political philosophy and how that impacts your role in the job.
Sure. There are 102 counties in Illinois. 17 elect their auditor, 85 do not. We wouldn't be joining the minority. We would actually be joining the majority. I serve as a representative for the city of Bloomington as a commissioner in the Public Building Commission, a budget of over $80 million. It happens to own the building that the county board is in, and the auditor doesn't audit that. It doesn't check in any way to see if it's accurate or if the bills are being paid properly. In fact, recently, our bills from the Public Building Commission were not getting paid by the county, and we had to go through serious efforts to get them paid. That's unacceptable. As a Libertarian, you needed 78 signatures to get on the ballot. As a Democrat, I needed 194. As a Republican, you need 264. If you run as an independent, you needed 6,582 signatures. That's another area I think that needs fixing. You don't have to be a member of a party. People have said to me, you're running as a Democrat, but you want to cut government, you want to reduce expenses. That sounds like a Republican and a Libertarian. Well, maybe it does, but that's what needs doing, and that's what I intend to do. Thank you.
We now come to the close as our closing statements from our two McLean County Auditor candidates who are with us today, and we ask for 90 seconds. And Rob, since you were last on the open, you'll go first in the close.
Thank you. My credentials for doing the auditing while I'm in the job and trying to change it to appointed is that I was president of the chamber, president of the History Museum, treasurer of the Girl Scouts, president of the Busey Bank in the area, and all of those roles, I got audited. So I was on the opposite side of what an auditor does, but when you're in charge, you really have to understand that role. I also spent 2 full weeks with the London Office of Audit for Continental Bank in Chicago in Vienna, and actually spent and lived in Vienna for 2 weeks, so I was doing an audit. When I was a member of the American Bankers Association, I led a group to do the audit of the American Bankers Association school in Kansas, and I served on an audit in Iowa, and both of those were 1-week stints. So I think I have an idea of what auditing is all about. I also believe that you need to be able to go outside of your own area, and if you have expertise, help. And I've done that with the county with the loan program that they've done. Thank you.
And Kevin Woodard, your close.
Yeah, I'd just like to close first by saying I agree with Rob about one thing. The signatures that are required for people to run for office definitely need to be made more fair for everybody. If Rob wanted to run as an independent, I know he thought about running as an independent a couple of years ago when he ran for county board, and the signatures would have been an issue, and I actually worked with him then. Rob's a good guy. I don't mean to insinuate anything otherwise. But I will say this. If you have tons of experience and are very, very capable of doing the job but don't value the position, how well will you be doing the job? I just think that's a problem. And if you say it's going to be appointed and it's not going to be political, I'm sorry, that's kind of like talking about nonpartisan races. Unfortunately, they don't really exist. Anybody that's appointed by somebody that's political is going to be political the same. So you don't really get rid of that either. So I would ask you to support me because I will be a watchdog for you. I'll be a true independent voice for you. And I'll add that the Libertarians are winning more auditor offices than anything else that they're winning across the country. And I would like to see that trend continue here in McLean County.